Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the one.
What up, punks?
Fudge, dude.
That's a tired one. What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast. I'm your host, Phil, and across from me is your boy...
Captain America! That was pretty good, wasn't it? I almost said a line from the movie, but I didn't want to spoil it. So.
Speaking of which, we will be talking about Avengers Endgame, and just to be safe, I would just assume this entire episode is
all spoilers.
Everything before this, spoilers. Everything after this, spoilers.
Here's the one spoiler-free thing I will say. Go see it this very second. Don't hesitate. Don't think. Go watch the movie.
Do it.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's all you got.
That's it. Spoiler free. The rest is spoilers for everything.
Everything else is going to be
absolutely
spoilers up the wazoo, because mostly this episode is basically just going to be us
emotionally processing.
Usually I don't get this way about movies. Even like MCU films, I'm just like, I don't get this way, but this movie is just like 11 years in the making at this point, so I'm just like, man, I can't even figure out what just happened. Like, basically the whole last
it's
day
crazy.
Since last night, I've been just
definitely
going nuts. So
absolutely.
But before we get into that, you got anything?
I just have one small thing. So last week I had mentioned Katana Zero, which came out on the Switch, and it's also on Steam for the PC, and it might be up there by the end of the year. Hopefully, it stays as maybe one of the top games I've played so far this year. Incredibly freaking difficult. Oh my gosh, it was real hard, like punishingly hard, but very rewarding.
Sounds like I won't be playing it.
You will not be playing it. That'll be like when we do a video series of how to get Phil angry. That will be very high on the list.
Play hard video games.
I'm just gonna make you play all the Souls, Bloodborne,
oh gosh,
Sekiro, and Katana Zero. But I highly recommend it. The story is really, really good. It's more like lore based and kind of this hidden narrative going on, and it's very, very cool how the writers actually weaved the gameplay mechanics and how things operate into the story, and how it's actually very critical to the story. And it's just I think why I loved it so much is it's a very atmospheric game that just pulls you in, but it's a pixel art side scroller like action game, so it might not be for some people if they're more into like 3D and more high-res stuff, but it's very detailed in its pixel art, which I'm very picky personally, in terms of if it's too blurry or I can't really understand what's going on, I stay away from it. But this was very well done. It was incredible. I'll
have to check it out sometime.
Definitely.
I find that I have a really hard time getting into platformers,
yeah,
especially when they're difficult.
Yeah.
But like for some reason I just don't get it, but maybe I just don't play enough of them. I need to give them more of a shot.
I will say that this one feels very the reward of playing it is almost identical to what I felt playing a Souls game. Like, and I will say that there's a level of it where it was weird. It was more enjoyable, and I wanted to play it more because so how it works is if you die in a level, you go like you have to clear rooms, and so there could be like 10 guys in a room. So let's say you navigate and you get to guy 8, and then guy 9 kills you. Then you go all the way back and all the guys reset. And then you just keep doing that until you make it all the way through. So that was really, really addicting because you're like, oh, I should have done this, or I saw this and I need to do this instead.
Is it always the same?
Yes.
It's not procedurally generated?
No.
Okay.
So it's always the same. So that's a lot of fun. But what got really repetitive that was like infuriating, but very much my fault, is I would get too antsy and I'd think I had out-thunk the machine of, all right, I'm just going to run in, I'm going to do... Okay, that didn't work. I'm going to... Oh my gosh. And then
like that's why I can't do it, because I get like that, where like I get too psyched out and I just like try and do it faster.
Right.
Like my reaction to games being hard is to do things faster than becoming more methodical.
I am never going to put you in a high pressure situation because I'm very scared of what would happen.
I don't respond well.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
Phil, what do you think of this? Like, I don't know, Dad. But
just curl up into a
ball. But yeah, highly recommend. I think in a way it was more addicting than Dark Souls or Bloodborne to me, because I think with Bloodborne it takes more time to get to the parts to retry. So to me, I kind of like have just dropped Bloodborne for a bit because I just don't have the time to keep retrying that. Whereas this, even if it took me 50 tries, I could do 50 tries in like 15 minutes. And then by the time I beat it, it was like the whole level itself was maybe like 30 at the max if I was really struggling on like the harder stuff. So I think that was a little more tangible for me personally, but highly recommend. Highly
Dope.
recommend. That's it.
Cool.
So
I don't think I really have anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's dive in.
Yeah, because everything I've done this week was
real quick,
same as last week. So
as an uplifting side thing, I got your text on Atlanta and that you watched the episode. One, you saw the Teddy Perkins episode, which is
oh my gosh,
incredible.
That was
haunting,
tense, yeah.
But it's incredible.
It to be honest, the way that they set it up, I thought it was going to be one of those things where it's like they're leading you on to believe it's like something sketchy, but then it just ends up being nothing because that seems to be the theme that Atlanta has. Like they like lead you to believe something surreal is happening, but really it doesn't. But in this one, no, they just like paid it off, and I'm like,
oh my gosh,
like Darius must be freaking like, how is he not scared this whole time? He's just like such a chill dude.
I love Darius.
Like,
I love Darius.
In his mind, he's probably like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
I'm dead.
Yeah,
and he's just going with
universe.
it. Like,
this is the universe, man.
It's the universe. Yeah. But yeah, that show is just insane.
Yeah, and then is it right after that is the one at the fraternity?
No, I think it's two after.
Two after that?
Because the one after that is the Drake one, Champagne Poppy.
Okay.
Where it's Van's episode kind of.
Yeah.
I kind of like that they're doing little character episodes.
Yeah.
But then it makes me miss the Entourage episodes.
Yeah.
But then they go back into that. But
yeah,
that one was so nuts.
That was so funny. I love just like Al, like that hard cut to this drunk frat guy, and then this hard cut to Al and Ern. I was like Al and Ern sitting on the couch under the Confederate flag, and you're just like, no, like,
and
dude,
two lines of just
like naked
naked
with
dudes
hoods on.
and then this like white dude's like, dude, you're one of my two favorite rappers, you and Post Malone. And he's like, and they got like guns hanging on the wall and a Confederate flag. And then he's like, dude, I remember when I was growing up, my friend would always play this song. He's like, you remember that? And he starts playing and he makes all the guys dance, and they're
dance,
like
fools, and
they're all like dancing.
It.
And then he walks them out, and then Al and Ern just start busting a gut. They're like, what the heck?
Oh, I love that. Is one of my favorite episodes in that show. That's just that whole scene is absolutely hysterical.
I think I've got like half of the last episode left.
Okay.
And I didn't realize it was the last episode, and I'm like,
I think the actress who plays Van has said that it's going to be a while until I think
actually
Tonio told us about
FX
that.
actually confirmed that it's delayed.
Yeah.
Because Donald Glover broke his foot.
Oh,
so he had to delay some tour stops. So now he has to like redo those shows.
Yeah.
So then it kind of pushed things back, and they're like, we would rather it be quality than quantity.
Oh, good.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're not abandoning it because of that. And they basically said, like, we know that he's very busy and he has a lot of things. So we're kind of just
talented
pacing
dude.
it. So
definitely. I'm so excited.
I know. It's such a good show.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe I haven't watched it before. I might actually just rewatch it because it's so good.
addicting.
I love all the characters, and it's just
it's spectacular.
super cool.
It's one of my favorite shows ever. But anyway, I just remember that and that being really funny. And I want some brevity in this episode because it's about to get real.
Also, Tracy, he's
dude. I love
the whole
Tracy.
episode where he's like pretending to be a bodyguard,
and he's like,
hey,
let me check this out first. He goes in and like make sure everything's.
Or they're in the car, and like Ern is super ticked off at him.
Yeah,
and he just like keeps like goofing on him. He's like, come on, boy. And he has like this really specific way of saying boy. He's like, boy. It's like halfway between like Arthur Morgan and Kratos, but like with that tinge to it.
Yeah,
it's just so funny. He's just like keeps poking the bear.
Yeah,
and then he just stomps on him when he gets out to fight him.
Just whoops him.
Oh gosh,
I love Tracy.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
I absolutely love Tracy.
So that show's amazing.
Yeah, so good.
I'm glad I watched it.
You know what else was amazing? Captain America, Civil War, and
Endgame, Avengers Endgame.
All those other Marvel movies.
I'm curious on a top level.
Yeah.
Going into this movie, what were your expectations? Like what needed to happen in this movie for you to say like, okay, this is a good wrap up?
Yeah.
And with like before you had seen the movie, what was in your mind?
So I think a lot of the questions racing through my mind were one, harkening back to our Captain Marvel episode. What are they going to do with her? Because I know that was one of not just our concerns, but I think the comic community and the superhero community at large.
Yeah, I was afraid it would feel cheap.
Yes,
having
depending on
her
what they
kind
did.
of be the resolution to the
Yes,
story because
and-
she just entered the universe.
And I will say, I absolutely love how they handled her,
Yeah.
and it made me really excited for future stuff that they will do with her. And I think that was exactly kind of what I predicted in the Captain Marvel, where my opinion of that movie was, I still think based on how Endgame went, we didn't need that movie, and I almost wish that they would have just put it out.
The funny thing
after.
is, she actually filmed this movie before Captain Marvel.
Yeah, which was kind of strange to me
Yeah.
when I heard that. But not diving too deep because we'll get to details later. But I really loved what they did with her and her character, and I really liked.
I think if they didn't, this is a side note. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think if they didn't have that movie before this, I think her appearance in the movie almost would have felt like a Deus Ex Machina. She would have just been a random character that people are like, wait, why is she coming out of nowhere?
That's fair.
Almost like,
that's fair.
I think they probably felt like they had to just to set it up a little bit.
And I do think I actually predicted that they were going to send her out into space to get Tony, because I think I don't
even think they sent her. I think that was her
right. I think
first
she
time
stumbled
coming back.
right. I think
I knew that was gonna happen. I was like,
definitely.
There's no way Tony's dying that.
Yeah. So anyway, top level stuff. Captain Marvel, just how that was gonna work out. Which characters were gonna die, or which characters were they gonna send off, and how they were gonna get sent off.
In your mind, without knowing what happened, were there certain characters that you needed certain things to happen for, or was it just like you kind of just knew something was going to happen?
So this was like man, dude, this is very. We apologize in advance. This is not a review, or even, it's very much a discussion, but it's more like processing, because
I feel like this is also another side note, but I've noticed with our movie talks, it's because it's a podcast. I like that. It's less of like us reviewing the movie, and more of us just having a discussion, processing kind of between ourselves.
I agree.
Like what happened and what do we think, and film perspective, creative perspective, story perspective,
Definitely.
and kind of just like by the end, we usually come to a resolution about what we really thought about the movie.
Definitely.
And I kind of like that aspect of it. Like we're not really reviewing it.
Absolutely.
We're just kind of like bringing light to it.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's basically what we're doing here, I think.
Definitely.
It's on a much deeper level.
For sure.
Our thoughts are not in order.
No,
this
they're
is
not.
literally the day after.
Literally. It's almost 24 hours.
I haven't even had time to process it.
No, dude. It's, yeah. So to that point, it was really weird because I actually had a lot of thoughts and expectations of kind of who was on the chopping block, who wasn't, how things were going to get resolved. But it was very much from what I was anticipating, really out of kind of emotional protection, because I was like, I kind of had certain things that I wanted to happen, because I was like, because if they do this, I'm going to be wrecked. And they literally did everything the exact opposite that I was hoping they would in terms of what was going to make me the most emotionally comfortable. And I'm so glad that they did that, because what they did was absolutely incredible. And my initial anticipations were, and I was joking with my coworker about this actually, yesterday before we saw it. So today is Saturday when we're recording. This will be out Monday. So Friday, he and I were chatting, and I said, here's kind of what I'm envisioning. I think Cap and Iron Man are very clearly on the chopping block. I think in my head, there's more emotional payoff if you keep Tony alive. So either you kill Cap, kill Tony and Cap together, or neither of them. And they literally did none of those options.
They did the opposite.
And they killed Tony. And
do you think you just didn't want to accept it in your heart of hearts that they would have to kill Tony Stark?
I don't think that. So here's like the weird, I don't know. There's definitely a level of like, I think back, and I think this is why, people are going to critique the movie itself, and people are going to love the movie for like, oh, it's just an amazing film. But I think this is, to me, potentially one of the most creatively and emotionally impactful franchises I've ever experienced, because because I think it's weird. Like you're how many years older than me? We're pretty close to, like, I think you're only like 1 or 2 years
92
older.
I was born.
Okay, so like, so 2 years. So we were in middle school, high school when Iron Man 1 came out, and Incredible Hulk, which was 2008. So I would have been in like 8th grade going in freshman year or something.
Yeah, I think it was probably sophomore.
And yeah, so at that point, that was the first time I saw Iron Man. So like our very first experience of the Marvel cinematic universe was this movie with this dude who it's like, oh, cool, superheroes are in movies now. And it's like, oh, Iron Man. I don't really know a lot about Iron Man, but he's cool. And it's like Robert Downey, and he's like edgy. And there's this, yeah, it's like fun, pulpy, action superhero stuff. But then as I myself am watching these characters go on this emotional journey, like I myself am getting older and transitioning from middle school to high school, and from high school to college, and from college to a grown-up adult. And I think in the midst of experiencing all that growth, it's very, very surreal feeling like, and I don't want to say this in like a geeky, over-obsessed way, but more just literally from the impact of a creative medium. Like Tony Stark dying feels like an actual loss of a friend. And I don't say that tritely, and I don't mean that to sound trite, but there's a weird, like I have this weird, like sick feeling almost after it.
No,
like in an incredible way though, where it's like, I know this isn't like me being like, oh, it wasn't a good movie. It's more like, wow, Tony Stark as a character is gone forever. And like, yeah, all the other, like Captain America's not going to be in another movie and all this stuff, but his finality was different because he got to live out all these things. But like for Tony, like he didn't get the future with Pepper and his daughter, Morgan, like that's not going to happen. And so seeing that and remembering like when I was just starting high school, I watched this dude in his very first movie, and now I just watched him save the entire universe and give his life for it, and that's heavy. And like, I think like this movie, I'm going to be so amped, and like even Zach was kind of texting me like, there's some stuff with Thor that he was kind of bummed, and I think we should talk about that because I think it's kind of interesting. But just from a level of, this was an amazing movie, but I think why it to me is might be the most incredible experience in terms of film for me personally is the life journey that I've gone along as well in the midst of that, and feeling like I can look at myself and see, like, that's what creative mediums are. And I've been reading in this book, Images and Idols by the Humble Beast dudes, and it's just like talking about like how we've been designed as human beings to be creative and like how that's reflective of God and stuff. And it's super cool. And one of the things that he talked about is that what a lot of creators love about creating is the joy that it elicits from other people. And I think this and other shows that I feel I find myself really attached to, that's what it does. Is it's not just, oh, this is the thing I can, because it's hip and it's new and it's trendy, but there's an emotional payoff or like feeling that I get from it. And I think this movie and Tony being the one to give it all was a huge part of that.
It's kind of interesting trying to like process and think about this movie, because while this movie is amazing, I don't think I would put it at the top of my list. As far as like, if we were just looking at this movie as like a standalone like film.
Yes, I would agree.
I think because of what it's done, like the way that it resolves everything that we've seen for the past, and it probably doesn't resolve everything. There's probably things that you could find, but I think resolves the major points, especially in the character arcs and stuff. I think like it's just so satisfying in a way. And similar to you with Captain America, I was thinking this morning, just kind of like thinking about the movie and like different things, and I had the same feeling with Cap. I was like, frick, like he didn't die, but he's done. Like he's not going to be in any more movies. And I was just like, man, that almost like, because thinking back to the beginning, like Captain America was not my favorite hero. Iron Man was in the beginning, because it's just like a normal dude who is rich, obviously, but like he doesn't have any superpowers. His only power is he's rich. And Captain America, and then I remember watching the first Avengers movie, and Cap's just like jumping around because he can't fly, and all the other heroes are like flying and shooting thunder and like super strong, and it was kind of like Cap seemed like this like almost like stunted compared to everybody else. But then thinking back on his like character journey up until this point, like he's actually become probably my favorite character in the movies because of like who he's become and what like the kind of leader and stuff he's been in the universe. And I was thinking this morning, like, frick, it was almost like the stages of grief. Like I was in like denial a little bit about like he's like, him and Tony are never gonna be in another MCU movie ever again, and that made me a little sad. I was like,
absolutely.
Man, this movie like really does a lot of stuff where you're just like, frick, dude. So, but yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I was expecting going into this were very similar to yours with the Captain Marvel thing. I was really wary with how they would use her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because they used her in the way that I didn't want them to use her, but because of the way the movie was structured, it was actually inconsequential because the whole, like, her killing Thanos, almost, like, I mean, Thor actually killed him, but she basically in the first 15 minutes of the movie, they, like, kill Thanos, and I'm like, oh, well, that was something.
Yeah.
But I think the way that the movie's structured, like, they were able to use her, send her away, and then have her come back in opportune times that worked, but weren't like the magic bullet that just saved everything.
And I think, to me, just to build on that too, because I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on that, because I think there's so many factors to this movie that are more impactful. But I think what made me excited is they very subtly alluded to me, at least reading between the lines, that she has room to grow, and that she does. Like, I remember there's a couple shots where I was like, good, I like this, where one was when they're at the board in the very beginning of the movie, and she comes back and she's looking and they're scrolling through all the people that died, and Nick Fury comes up and you can kind of see her, like, hiding her face away as she's kind of like choking up. And to me, I was like, that's exactly kind of the pathos that I was waiting for.
It's interesting because she almost reminds me of Iron Man 1, Tony Stark. Like,
exactly.
She's got that like arrogance and whatnot about her, where you're like, where you're just like, I don't really like you very much yet. Yeah. And but you're a cool character, and I'm excited to see where you go. And she kind of like, she feels like that to me, where like she rubs me the wrong way,
right?
But in a good way, because it's a part of the story. Like, watching the first Iron Man movie, I know that, like, he is this way for a reason because of what's happened to him. Yeah. And so it's interesting to see that and kind of see the parallels where, like, she's kind of being propped up as, like, the next Iron Man, as, like, the leader of the next era of heroes, basically.
Yeah. So that scene was good to me. They already showed this in the trailer, but the part where Thor just kind of like throws his axe next to her, I like that. Like, I like that she's like just
this one.
that she's just still, like, she's just this confident, cocky hero, and I like, again, I kind of like that. And I think, just like I said in our movie discussion for the standalone Captain Marvel, I think, just as all the other characters, it's just going to take time to see how they can creatively write character developing conflict for her, and I think they will do it well. And I think if her big thing is she's so overpowered, that could be really fascinating, because that, especially in the hands of Marvel, they could write what would be essentially a better Superman movie than, like, Man of Steel or some of these other things. Because I think of, like, Man of Steel, and, like, those were equally as boring, because it's like, well, Zod's gonna come in and just, like, destroy the city or whatever.
Yeah.
But I could see that she is, like, there are people that she's protecting, and because she's so powerful, and she's, you know, like, she even says in that one shot where she's like, what's happening on Earth is happening all over the galaxy.
Her weakness is basically that she can't be everywhere at all times.
And I think that could be
it seems
incredible.
Like that's kind of like
that
what
could be
they're
really,
writing as her thing. Like, she can only be in certain places at certain times, so she has to like pick and choose basically who she protects.
Right. And then going to the final battle scene, as kind of like those are, and then she's kind of basically gone after that moment, until the final battle scene. So I thought it was kind of a fun nod that she, like, zipped through the ship and just destroyed it, because I was like, that's her MO. Like,
Evan leaned over and whispered, and she's like, she really likes destroying ships.
Exactly.
I was like, that's her thing.
That's her thing.
Just flying right through them.
Yeah.
Exploding.
So I liked that. I liked the fun moment of, like, it was oddly, like, it was so fun. It was just like a fun thing where Peter's, like, kind of cowering the rock. He's like, hey, what's up? Like, who are you? And then she's like, hey, like, I heard you got something for me. And he's like, I don't know how you're gonna, like, do that, because he's just like naive high school Peter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, dude. Like, this seems kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And just that, you know, again, she's just kind of that calm, knows that she's not really in danger. Like, I got this. Like, just hand it over and I'll take it. And to me, this was the biggest thing. And I think, again, if they develop this into her character and help her grow, this could make her, again, have a very powerful Tony Stark type arc by the end of her involvement in the next 10 years or whatever. But she does end up getting in a fist fight with Thanos at one part, because they're all kind of jumbling in. And there's a point where she's, like, clearly overpowering him and, like, grabbing the gauntlet and kind of, like, punching him and zapping him, grabbing the gauntlet. And this was the thing that I was like, thank you. Thanos, in the fight, reaches in, grabs the Power Stone out of the gauntlet, and then she, like, zips to the side, realizing, oh, frick, and then gets punched. Like hard. Like, she tumbles and flies, and not a single person yet has done that to her in her movie or in this movie. And to me, that moment was the perfect example of like doing more things like that where she is very powerful. This wasn't we're just going to get a cheap shot in on Captain Marvel. It was Thanos is a seasoned veteran fighter who is very crafty and has been shown that he's also kind of a maniac and an adept fighter. And he outsmarted her like that in a second. Sorry, the snap was kind of like, but he thought quicker than her. Yep. And because of that, that tells me like, that could be something fun to explore, is like actually her having to get better at like thinking quickly and not just relying, because maybe that will have to be the thing, is they'll have to throw people at her that are just as powerful. And so then she has to start thinking smarter versus just being brawn. And again, there's so many cool things that I think they could do with her character. And I think with the time that they paid to her, it was totally fine. And I think if anyone's fretting or freaking out about it, like there's no.
And I think with that, one of my biggest fears with this movie was like, how are they gonna? Because in my mind, I wanted like the big four, like the original four, to get their due, and I wanted them to be the ones kind of like saving the day in a sense. Not in the sense that they like actually finish off the battle, because I think the payoff in that regard was definitely worth it. But I think getting to see them just like be the heroes one last time was like, if we get that, this movie will be everything that I wanted it to be, in a sense. And I feel like we got that to like way more than I expected.
Like I was not emotionally ready. There were some scenes
where I was just like, oh my gosh.
That's exactly.
Like I cannot believe this is happening.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Definitely.
That was basically my biggest expectation, was like, I don't want them to get shafted because it's their last movie. Like, for sure. I want to see them just like go ham.
Definitely.
Even if they get stomped on in the end. Like, so
cool. And while we're on the topic of Captain Marvel, and then we can move on, I promised my wife I would shout this out too. So I did appreciate the scene too where Peter has the gauntlet and all the female heroes come forward. I thought that was a cool, nice like homage to all the female heroes, and like, because I know
it was almost like Marvel saying like, hey, look, we do have a lot of female heroes
and they're all super awesome, like, and they're gonna go do this thing. So that was just a cool nod.
The scene with Scarlet Witch,
that was tight.
Where she's like, you took everything, and she just goes ham.
I was
like,
so
oh
ballin'.
Snap,
that
dude,
was
this
super
is awesome.
Ballin'. Yeah.
So I was excited to see those moments too.
Definitely. I'm trying to think of what to do with the next thing. So, your original question was the main things that this movie needed to hit. I'm going to say for it to be amazing.
And not in kind of just like, what were your expectations?
Exactly.
What needed to happen for you to say
so
this
I think the other big things were, I needed a passing of the mantle or some kind of allusion to what's to come. And I wanted every single character that was for sure confirmed to not be in it anymore, like what is happening to them. Because I didn't want it to turn into like, Cap is like, well, maybe I'll see you around. And they're like, yeah, Cap, we'll be looking forward to it. And you're like, he's not coming back. Like I didn't want like one of those moments. I wanted I am not walking out of this theater with any questions as to what is what. So I think the Cap thing to me is very emotional. I think the Tony giving up his life is more emotional, so I'll save those to the end because I think those are the bigger moments in the movie for me. The one thing I would love to get your insight on in terms of like the loss and people dying, I did not see Black Widow coming. I had no freaking idea that was going to happen.
I mean, when the scene happened, I saw it coming. I didn't know it was going to be her. I assumed it was going to be Ronan or whatever.
Hawkeye. Yeah.
But yeah, going into this, I did not expect that.
No.
Mostly because we're getting a Black Widow movie. So are they doing like her past?
It could be a prequel.
It's kind of like she's dead. No one cares anymore now.
Right.
Like, I don't know. It's kind of funny because like they had those like moments where they showed like the female heroes, but like they killed off like one of the two main ones basically.
Right.
I was like, I don't know, but I feel like that scene was super impactful.
Yeah,
in the moment.
I agree.
But I'm still torn on whether or not I felt like it should be her or him, because on one hand, he's got his family and stuff, but so did Tony, and like in a way, it would have been a redemption arc for him because like he literally just systematically slaughtered tons of people.
Right.
Like,
right.
Because Rhodey said there was like just bodies stacked in a warehouse somewhere in Mexico that this dude had killed. So it's like. Yeah. it almost would have been like redemption in a sense. Like
Yeah.
he sacrificed himself for like the stone or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I did not see that coming.
Definitely. No, that was like the one part, and it's not that it made it a bad movie, but I think I was just conflicted of, and I think this is hard because of all the characters in the entire Avengers crew. I think I was the most detached from Black Widow, and I feel like it's because across all the movies, she's the one we know the least. If you think about it, like Cap had his own standalone movies, Iron Man had his own standalone movies. We got to see a ton of Thor or Hulk in Thor Ragnarok. Thor had all his flicks. I mean, Hawkeye kind of disappeared after Avengers 2 or Age of Ultron, or I can't remember.
Civil War was his last
Was
movie,
it Civil War?
Because he had the ankle bracelet in the beginning
That's
of this
right.
one.
Yeah.
Because he was on Cap's side, I think.
Yeah,
but
and he kind of like quit, and he's like, yep, I'm done. And
yeah.
So, I mean, aside from him, but then, like, we have Clint's family that we're rooting for him to get back to or to see some kind of redemption for. Whereas for Natasha, I felt like I don't really know. You know, if anything, her death is more devastating to Hulk and to Cap America than it is to anybody else, and especially me as the viewer. And again, this is speaking from my perspective. There might be people who loved Black Widow across all the movies, and that was heart-wrenching. And I think if that's the case, like, I'm super glad that was an emotional, like, wow, that hurts. But
I honestly feel like she shouldn't have been the one sacrificed.
Yeah,
like,
I kind of agree.
I feel like Clint dying would have been better because, like, they alluded to him training his daughter, and he even called her
he like calls her Hawkeye. He's like, "Oh, way to go, Hawkeye!" Or
I don't think it was Hawkeye, was it?
Yeah, I thought he said,
because I know in the comics he becomes Ronin, or he calls himself Ronin, and
Hawkeye,
she doesn't become Hawkeye. She calls herself something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he trains his daughter, or I don't know if it's his daughter in the comics. It's some other like young girl, but they kind of alluded to that in the beginning because she just like nailed that bullseye like right off the bat. So, and I don't know, it's just weird because they killed off Tony and he's got a family, but then they don't. I don't know. That was the one scene that felt like it didn't have the full weight to it that I felt like it could have had.
Yes,
but I saw somebody post online because I was looking through Reddit just to see what people were saying, and there was a meme, but it was kind of like, did Tony and Nebula know when they sent those two to get the Soul Stone what they were actually getting themselves into? Did they like send them there because they knew that somebody would have to be sacrificed to get the stone?
Interesting.
Because I don't know if it's ever confirmed that people actually know how Thanos got the Soul Stone.
Yeah.
But Nebula does say in the movie, Thanos and Gamora went to whatever the place is called.
Yeah.
And only Thanos came back with the Soul Stone.
Yeah.
So she like knows something went on there, and her and Tony are the one they like send them those two to get it. So I'm wondering if they somehow like knew that was the sacrifice that had to be made.
Interesting.
And somebody even said Nebula kind of still sees them as like just Terrans who have no actual special abilities, and they're kind of disposable. And in a sense, I feel like
that's interesting.
The way that the movies have been written, they've always been kind of the disposable, like they're kind of like the padding. Like, oh, we got 4 like super powered humans, and then we got like 2 extras to fill it out, kind of to make it feel like there's more going on.
Yeah,
kind of. And
definitely.
It's almost,
that's an interesting
it's almost like
perspective.
One of them getting killed was kind of just like necessary in a sense.
I agree.
But I mean, I will say that I like Clint more, especially in this movie. I was like, some of those scenes with him, I'm like, I want that as a standalone movie. Like,
correct.
Like in Tokyo with like the darkness and just
basically like
samurai
John Wick
fights
with Hawkeye.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this is dope. It's like it was very different.
Yeah,
compared to the rest of the movie, but also the same in tone. So
totally.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that scene is one where it kind of stands out to me as like it didn't feel. It was emotional. I knew that it was supposed to be emotional because as soon as they started walking up there, in my mind, I hadn't thought about it up until that point, and I was like, oh, wait. Like, these two have always kind of had this weird dynamic between them, and now they're basically walking the same path that Thanos walked with his daughter, and I was like, frick, they don't know what's coming yet. And you kind of like felt the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think I just wasn't very attached to the characters, so it didn't feel the way it should have.
Yeah, and I think that's tricky, and I just had a thought, but before I get there, I think that's a really good point that I think to me the only reason I would have been more emotional if Clint died is because he had a family. If he didn't, wow, that sucks. But like, that's kind of my only response to either of them. Whereas I think because Clint has his family that he wants to get back to, and there's all this emotional buildup of like, he got to see them for a split second, then he's yanked back. There's part of me of like, oh, that's going to sting when he dies. And then he doesn't. And it's like, oh, well, I don't really feel anything for Black Widow. But this just dawned on me. And maybe this is what they're planning for the Black Widow movie. And maybe it's kind of a filler or a Band-Aid for what they didn't do in the earlier movies. Is I wonder if they're going to explore Hawkeye and Clint's relationship and their partnership in the Black Widow movie.
You mean?
Right. So then if you're watching Endgame again, or because I feel like that's one of the kind of wild, almost timeless effects of this franchise is if you watch it later, as stuff gets added, it just carries on more weight and it just becomes more important. And so I don't know for sure. Obviously no one does, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if it turns out that the Black Widow movie is actually exploring her connection there, so that looking back, like when we watch Black Widow or like we watch the Black Widow movie, if there's some nod to like, because now we all know what happens to her, there's some nod where she's like, Clint, if it ever comes down to me and you, I will always give up my life first, or something. Or if, because it seemed like that was
a little
the
bit
fight.
More weight to the moment.
Exactly. Because then all of a sudden it's like that moment has weight because we have the context of like, and she did, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a follow-up, if that's kind of what they do with it. I honestly hope it is, because of all the characters, like I said, I feel like we knew Hawkeye and Black Widow the least, and I feel like I was more connected to Hawkeye because we kind of know some backstory to him, whereas Black Widow is aloof. She doesn't really have any family. She had this romantic fling with Hulk, and she kind of had some advances with Captain America, but there really isn't, she wasn't like tied to anybody. We didn't really spend a lot of time getting to know her or her with someone else to like have that be really emotional, because that's maybe something too. If it would have been Hulk and Widow on that tower, that would have been devastating. But because it was Hawkeye and Natasha, like, I don't really know like what to do.
Yeah.
So that's my one thought. But
I'm curious.
All aside,
I'm curious what you thought about the pacing of this movie, because there's a part of me that feels like the beginning was almost a little too slow. And maybe that was the point, because I think what they were trying to do is really drive home the point how like desperate and like alone these people felt. And kind of like driving home that point of like darkness and trying to figure out how to live in the wake of half of the people you knew dying, and kind of like losing all of your friends and stuff like that. Yeah. But there was a part of me during some of the scenes where I was like, okay, let's do something. And
do you have something in particular that you're thinking of? It
was just kind of like, it's hard to explain, but like just the first hour of the movie, there were some moments, and I don't know the specific moments, where I was just like, not that I was bored, but it was more of like wanting more to happen. But I think it's just because they were trying to really drive home the point of like the hopelessness of the circumstances.
Right.
So
yeah, my perspective, I think that was a very distinct choice, that it was kind of a 50-50 gamble with passive and more engaged audiences. Is I think people who are really impatient were going to be, and not saying that that's you, but I think just like your average moviegoer who's like, oh my gosh, this is taking more than 2 minutes, like get on with it.
Yeah.
Doesn't understand that if they were to make this all go really, really quickly, it would feel really, really cheap, because all of a sudden, if it just cuts to them sitting in the office and they're like, well, what do we do now? Well, I heard we can get pin particles and like go back in time. Like, I think that would feel weird, because it's like, well, you just spent 5 years figuring out, like, just trying to cope with it. And then I think that kind of gives more weight to the fact that the universe is actually genuinely affected by this travesty. Yeah. And it's not just like, well, that kind of sucks. Well, I guess we'll figure it out. It actually is something that caused people emotional damage that they're actually having to go to support groups for, which to me was really, really interesting. And I actually loved and I think maybe
that's part of it, is because this movie tonally is so different than any movie that has happened, because like a lot of these people that we've seen as like beacons of hope and heroes and stuff were like depressed and like they were cursing a lot more, and like
Yeah.
not that that's a bad thing, but like these people don't really like swear that much, but they were like swearing and they were really bitter and they were fighting with each other, and like even just like the scenes themselves felt darker, and like it was almost like going the DC route, not like Zack Snyder level, but like it was more somber and moody, and I think maybe because of that it had that effect of feeling like time was just slow.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I didn't get bored was because I knew that that's what they were trying to do. Like it was kind of like they were forcing you to like live in their reality in a sense.
Yeah.
Like this just desperate, like almost like post-apocalyptic.
That's
world where
a
like
good explanation.
These people are still alive, but
Definitely.
like most of the Avengers are gone. Most of the heroes are gone, because when you get to that final scene at the end, you really do realize how many of these like heroes actually got vaporized. Most of them were gone, and so. I think it definitely did like drive home that feeling of where you're just kind of like sitting there like almost depressed for like an hour. I'm like, man, like how are they going to get out of this? And even when they like solved it, it was still kind of like you didn't believe that it was going to work, and it was kind of like this very slow crawl. And then once it finally works, and once you finally all of the pieces come together and it just explodes. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, like they're going nuts. And even then it was kind of like just all these moments where you just keep getting beaten down, and it was just, now that I'm processing it, I feel like the pacing was very slow, but it was like a slow build to this like cataclysmic moment where it just explodes. And then you're like, you're just like on the edge of your seat. You're like, let's go.
Absolutely.
So
no, that's a good point. And I think in terms of the overall pacing too, I think maybe why it also maybe felt jarring, or it felt like it went really slowly, is because once things it was interesting. Once there was a divisive plan and it went into motion, chaos ensued, because all of a sudden bad things starting happening, conflict is arising. We just lost the Tesseract, we need to go back in time another jump, and we need to get this and do this, and this person won't give me the stone, and we almost lost this, and like, oh my gosh, like this, what's her face, the robot lady, I can't remember.
I just said her name like
I know. I was like, I should remember.
Forget now. Yeah,
but Nebula. Nebula's like, oh my gosh, now she's left, and from there on, it just doesn't stop. And then you're like, my anxiety was ramping up of like, someone's gonna die, like
Yeah, there's like all these, because the first part is super slow and super methodical and puts you in this weird mood.
Definitely.
And then when they start time traveling, it almost makes you anxious. You're like,
oh, absolutely,
man, everything's going wrong, and like, frick, what's going on? And there's a lot of jumps and a lot of like different things, and you're like, frick,
you're really, it's disorienting.
You're just like waiting for somebody to die, or somebody to screw something up, or in the time travel stuff, you're just like trying to figure out like, okay, they're going here and here and here, and then how is this not affecting anything? And like, and then they like, it's almost like there's 3 different acts of like feelings that they're trying to drive home in a sense.
Definitely.
And like thinking about it now, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The way that they structured it, but
definitely.
Oh.
Yeah.
Roller coaster.
And then by the time you get to the end, it's just emotionally traumatizing in the best way possible, because you've just gone through this literal roller coaster of pacing to get to the end, and it's like, it's done. And now we're watching the people say their final goodbyes, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like I can't, like, even when the movie was over, I was literally just aghast. That was amazing. Like that was all that's all I could do. But
yeah, I feel like this, in the same way that Infinity War did it well, where they kind of like figured out how to introduce this giant ensemble of characters, they kind of did the reverse of that. They figured out how to resolve different characters and kind of like bring character, like the little scene with Wanda and Clint, like what, these 2 people don't even talk to each other, and now they're like hugging and like commiserating based on their loss or whatever. And it's kind of like these small little moments where you're reminded that all of these people are like a team and they're heroes and they fight together, but they're also kind of a family, and they're still trying to learn how to be that with everyone. And they just lost someone.
Definitely.
Oh, also side note, at the Tony Stark funeral, when they're like
that
panning
kid
back,
that
kid was the kid from that small town. I saw that today on the internet. I was like, oh, that's who that was. So I thought that was cool,
for sure.
But I think the way that they kind of reversed what they did in Infinity War, and kind of like, and even during the fight, they kind of had all these different little moments where the characters kind of like are interacting with each other, and like they're bringing the gauntlet here and there, and different characters are talking and stuff. It was just so dope.
Yeah. So I'll get to kind of the other expectations later. So basically deaths and passing on the mantle. The other big thing I really wanted is I wanted a dope ass fight scene of like literally the scale and gravity of what was going on, and I wanted it to be this. I wanted some kind of final fight that was rewarding, and I
feel like the impatient person in me was like,
get basically on with
like
it.
I wanted to get to that part that I knew was coming.
Yeah.
Like I knew that they were going to give us this intense payoff that we've been waiting for, but it was like I got to wait like an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there because this is a 3-hour long movie.
Right.
So like I was sitting there just like basking in the slowness and the anxiety of it, and then waiting for that moment to happen.
Yeah.
But oh gosh.
And I think to me, the Russo brothers and the whole planning team did an incredible job knowing exactly what people were waiting for and teasing them every other second with it. You know, like that time when Thanos has his thing and he's destroying Cap's shield, I was like, okay, it's gonna be Cap. Like Cap's the one who's gonna go.
I was waiting for him to just straight slice his head off, and I was like, I don't want that to be the way he goes, but if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And just that moment of him like laying on the ground and just like sitting in that moment, and him getting up and like finally standing up, and then just like, on your left, Cap. And you're like, what the frick? Like, who's... And then you see the circle, and you're like, oh, dude!
Yeah, was it Sam?
Yeah, it was Sam, because that was his line.
I remember
from,
like 10, 15 minutes before
Winter
that,
Soldier.
I like leaned over to Evan, and I was like, where are the other Avengers? Like, they already snapped, so these people got to be somewhere.
Exactly.
And I was just waiting for it, and as soon as Sam started talking to him, he's like, Cap, you there, Cap? And he's like, what?
He's like, on your left.
And I was like, oh no. And when all of those portals just freaking opened and all of these heroes just started walking through, I was like,
just that like that buildup of like the first one, and it's like T'Challa and his mom and his sister, and they just slowly walk out. I was like Gloria was wearing her Black Panther t-shirt. She was like,
yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
And then like, you know, then all of them start opening, and then Falcon comes out, and you're like, oh snap. And then you see like all the other, and then you see like Spidey come out, and you see all these people, and then you see Doctor Strange, and then you see like armies and armies and armies of people and all these, and you're just like, it's about to go down. Like, oh, dude.
Even before that though, like I think this is my favorite scene in the entire movie, was when Thanos has Thor just pinned down. And I don't know how he was able to hold on to Stormbreaker.
Dog.
I don't know if Stormbreaker has the same powers as Mjolnir or whatever. Yeah. And Thor's like about to get chopped in half with this axe, and all of a sudden you just hear Mjolnir like flying through the air. And doesn't it like hit Thanos on the way through?
Yeah.
And it just pans, and Cap just grabs it, and I'm like, oh! And he just pounds on Thanos with that thing, and he's like conjuring lightning and just like beating the snot out of him. And I'm like, I think the theater cheered a little bit for that part.
Everyone was just like, oh,
we're like,
my
did
gosh.
he finally just grab Thor's hammer? Oh gosh. And then Thor and Cap are just double teaming on him. Like one's got the hammer and one's the axe, and get the little scene where they like accidentally switched, and he's like, I'll take that one.
He's like, no, you take the little one. And like, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Dude, that I feel like that Cap scene stood out so much to me.
Yes.
Because they just pan to him and like hard stance, and he just grabs, and there's like lightning flaring around his fist, and I'm like, and like this was better than I could have imagined.
The weight, like just from in terms of direction and more the nitty gritty of the film development for that, just how powerful every single swing, and him
because he like scrapes the ground one moment, and like lightning, like almost friction lightning comes off of it, and he just boom,
and then like there's the one
him.
part where he like throws his shield, and he like ricochets the hammer off of it. He like grabs his shield, and he does like the swing thing into him, and then it's just like beating him senseless. Dog!
Yeah.
That scene was so awesome. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. I can't freaking believe that movie.
Such good payoff.
That was an incredible fight.
But yeah, going from there, because that was basically exactly what I wanted. I wanted like these people to have a shot at doing what they needed to do.
Yes.
And then they fail, and then that's the moment everybody else comes in, and it's kind of like, okay, the team's back together. let's do this.
Yep.
And then it just wrecks. And then it builds up, and then Captain Marvel comes back. It's kind of like adding in the layers of like expectation. And I think they knew exactly like people want to see the team that's been there for the last 10 years doing their thing.
Yep.
But then they also want to see the new people, and then
Yep.
Captain Marvel, and they all kind of got their time to shine, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminded me of like the fight scene in Aquaman a little bit, where it's just like this intense like space battle, but like not in space, obviously.
Yeah, I almost turned to you at the end. I think when we were kind of like you and Evan and Gloria and I were all talking afterwards, I almost told you, I was like, that was literally the Aquaman fight scene done correctly.
Yep.
like that's basically what it was. Like, because I remember in Aquaman, it's just like, oh snap, that's a lot of CGI. Whereas this movie, I was like, get him, get him. Like, it was so, like, the amount of excitement coursing through my body was just unreal. I've never felt that in a movie like that before. It was incredible. Definitely.
But even through that whole thing, I was like who's gonna die here? Because at that point, nobody had really died yet.
Yeah.
And they surprisingly didn't kill off very many people during that fight. But like the whole time, I was on the edge of my seat, like just waiting. Honestly, I was waiting for Cap to die the whole time, because like it seemed like that's the way they were going with it. Because he was just like giving it his last drop of sweat and blood, trying to take down Thanos.
Yep.
And,
definitely. Yeah. So on the word of Cap, just because we were kind of mentioning the Thor. So one of the things that Zach actually texted me about today. So he loved it. So he actually got to see it in Japan, and I was joking that he texted. We have like a family group chat just because in like an app, because we can't reach him normally over stuff, and so he texted Thursday night, I think, like, hey, going to see Infinity or Endgame in an hour, and my whole family just jumped in and was like, dude, don't say anything. What turned into like
stunt on you. And
he was like trying to stunt, and literally my entire family was like, shut your mouth. So I just thought that was hilarious. But he and I were chatting. I texted him last night and was just like, oh my gosh, dog, that was amazing. And he had said he had like one gripe, and I think it's actually really interesting, and there's been a couple people, he sent me a video of someone else who had kind of mentioned this too, but specifically like Thor and Thor's arc in this movie. And that was interesting, and I think I'm conflicted on how to feel about it, because the way I'm feeling right now is what they did in this movie is intentional and purposeful, and how they end it, and Thor literally walking on the ship with the Guardians of the Galaxy, tells me that this is like, and it's interesting that Gamora didn't come back, that they didn't bring her back, and now Thor
they
is kind of
did, but unintentionally.
Right. Well,
which I'm sure the alternate timeline Gamora will probably be in the next Guardians film, and she'll be like Gamora, but it'll be like this weird tension because she won't know any of them, but she's maybe hanging out with them. I don't know.
Yeah, because is she still alive? Because I thought technically when Tony flashed the stones at the end, I
don't know if she counted as a part of Thanos' entourage.
Because I thought
I don't know how Tony decided who to kill and who not to kill.
Right, because I thought it was interesting that she wasn't in the group.
They didn't specifically show her disappear, I don't think.
Right.
But they also didn't show her on the ship.
Right.
So I don't know what her
if she's
status
still
is.
alive. Yeah, so that's kind of confusing.
Maybe it'll be her and her sister doing something.
Yeah, it could be.
Maybe they'll make a Gamora and Nebula movie.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
I'd take it.
Yeah. So I think
what were the thoughts on Thor?
So I think the thought was you have Thor. You have Thor, who specifically across all his movies, he kind of started out like a blasé character, and then you had Dark World, which was like even potentially more blasé, and then you had Thor Ragnarok, which was incredible, and then you had his arc and his journey in Infinity War, which was unbelievable, and then you come into Endgame, and it felt like it kind of pittered out almost, because he turns into this like, I think this is I'm sorry, I know Zach's gonna be listening to this. Sorry if I'm misrepresenting you. I'm just kind of recounting. This isn't exactly how I feel about it, but I think this was his where he was coming from. Of Thor became one of his favorite characters in Infinity War, because he was like this character that you've known as like this emotionally detached, and then all of a sudden in Thor Ragnarok he became this goofball, and now he like watched his brother be murdered in front of him, and he lost his entire people literally, and now he's like on the run, and he lost his eye, and there's all this stuff going on, and then that like when he gets the Stormbringer axe, and then for him the emotional devastation of if he would have aimed 6 inches higher, he would have kept all this from happening, and then the spiral and depression that he went into. And so from that perspective, I think what they did with him in Endgame was stellar. I think what he felt was that they almost didn't pay him his due justice, and kind of making him this like groveling.
I agree. I agree
groveling
with that
oaf to an
But
extent.
I think Thor has never gotten his due justice, and I think that is what led to this because his character arc has never been consistent per se, and even like Ragnarok is a fun movie, but I think even from Ragnarok to Infinity War, I think they're still having a hard time figuring out what to actually do with him.
Yeah,
and in a sense, I feel like he's almost a Captain Marvel character, where like if they truly utilized his actual power, like I think he would just go nuts.
Yeah,
I think like he has
that's
the power
an interesting
to just
point.
Because when he comes in Infinity War and just starts just shredding dudes with the lightning bolts at the end, like that was dope. But that's almost like Captain Marvel in this movie, where like
that's fair.
And that's why they got rid of him and Hulk for Civil War. Like it's just like I think they wanted this movie to almost be like Captain America and Iron Man's resolve.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Thor's still around.
Yeah.
They didn't actually get rid of him. I hope he's in Guardians 3, and that's kind of his his denouement, basically.
Right, and the fact that they have him literally going on the ship, because I think Chris Hemsworth hasn't said anything about his contract.
No.
But I think he's technically out of, like, he's done with the Avengers contracts. I think all their contracts are up. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does, like, one or two more. Maybe he does like a Guardians movie and then he does like one more standalone Thor movie or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe he just does Guardians and then after that he's like, all right, I've had my fun. I'm good.
Yeah, and I feel like I liked what they did with him in this movie because
Same.
I don't think after what happened in Ragnarok and after what he became in Infinity War and then what happened at the end of Infinity War and the beginning of this movie, I don't think he dealt with his pain properly.
Yeah.
And I think this movie was basically him not dealing with it.
Really like spiraling.
At all. Like he spiraled hard. And I feel like based on what they did in Ragnarok and Infinity War and ignoring everything else,
yeah,
I feel like this was the logical conclusion.
Interesting.
And
yeah,
I can see why people would be mad about that because
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I think
why
is Thor all depressed and sad and he refuses to acknowledge it? And I think like out of all of these heroes, somebody has to be the one that's like being almost realistic. Like they refuse to get over their pain.
Definitely.
And the only time he really gets over it is in that fight scene where he like somehow magically braids his beard and his hair, and I'm like, oh, that looks sick.
Yeah.
and then just goes nuts.
Yeah.
But up until that point, he's dealing with the fact that half of his people or more, I don't really know what happened there. Like
a lot of his
I thought
people
the ship
are
was
gone.
destroyed.
Yeah.
But somehow some of them are still alive. But like most of his people are gone.
Right.
Dead. And it's kind of his fault in a sense. Or he probably blames himself a little bit for that.
Yeah.
And then
his mom's dead.
His dad's dead. Which is kind of his fault. Like I think he's blaming himself for all these things.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be a god. He's supposed to be this like strong character that he's basically supposed to be a king in a sense. Yeah. And that's kind of like when he talks to his mom, she's like, stop trying to be the person that you're supposed to be and be the person that you are.
Yeah.
And I think that was the moment where he was like, frick. And then I think that was kind of his turning point in this movie where he realized what he was really running from.
Yep.
And I think him kind of becoming the melted ice cream, whatever. I think that was him like inappropriately dealing with his pain and his grief. Like he could have killed Thanos, but he didn't do it properly. So then that was on him. Yeah. But then when he got the chance, he just did it. And I think that was weighing on him that he killed Thanos and now they have no way of saving people, like figuring out where the stones are. And it was kind of like every step along the way in the past couple of movies, like he's just been getting hammered on emotionally.
Yeah,
and
that's a really good point.
I feel like in this movie, it just reared its head. Like his depression or whatever you want to call it, like just reared its head. And
that's a really interesting point. Yeah, because I think that to me is why, and I think it's because I kind of bought into the fact that, to your point, one of these heroes needs to be so emotionally damaged by all of this that they do or become something that needs to grow by the end of the movie. And I think with Thor, what's interesting is, to your point, he is the god. Like he is the next to Captain Marvel and like Doctor Strange. He is one of the top three there who is like ready to throw down. And I think it's more poetic that he, who is supposed to be the strongest and the most put together, has always struggled with being the strongest and putting himself together, and is now spiraling into a depression. And I read a Vanity Fair article about this, which the first part was kind of goofy. They were kind of complaining about like, oh, he's making fun of fat people and stuff, like shame on you. But the second part was actually very, very fascinating, where I was actually talking about what Hemsworth did, talking to how he felt like he couldn't do anything with Thor's character in the first 2 movies, and he felt like, I'm dying here. Like, I don't know what to do with this character. Like, I like, this is tough. And so I think that's why we got this explosive, bombastic Ragnarok movie, is because he worked with the directors to be like, look, dudes, we need something more interesting and engaging here, and we need to find something out. And I think in kind of latching on to that kind of humorous, goofy side of him, it's really kind of interesting, because that's also kind of his dynamic with his brother. Like, his brother was a mischief, was always like kind of mischievous and like goofy and stuff like that. And now he's kind of the same way. And I think it's very interesting to see him be the one who falls off the ledge emotionally, and just how and if like really sitting in it, that like he deserves of anybody to be the most emotionally devastated. Because I mean, like Cap or whatever, it's like, yeah, Thanos just like punched me in the face, and like, what am I going to do about it? But for Thor, he looked Thanos in the eyes with his axe buried in his chest and heard the haunting words, "You should have aimed for the head." And like,
he literally was right there.
And he was literally, and he
was like, "What have you done?"
Yeah, he was literally inches away from the thing that caused him all of this. And so I think for him to be the one to fall into the spot, it's like, yes, it sucks because we want Thor to be like the cool bad A hero that he's been, and like this awesome dude that we've loved. But I think of anybody, his is actually probably the most human, if on a human level, the most realistic looking. Like, because imagine if for argument's sake, let's imagine what he went through in Infinity War. Like, let's remember that was a whole journey for him as well, and coming and having to make Stormbringer, and it was a whole ordeal and all this stuff, and he's had to grow across all his movies and realizing that he needs to become a better man and a better leader and a better friend and Avenger and all this stuff. And he actually gets to the point where he's like, I have made it, dude. And he's running through this field and he's shredding and he's doing all this stuff. And then he's like, this is it. I'm going to save everybody. And he flies in so determined to end this all, and he fails. And he is, in his mind, is the cause of his brother's death, his mom's death. The half of the universe dying is on his shoulders. And so for him to go into an alcoholic depression is probably the most realistic, like, human arc that they could have done. And
I think,
as I'm thinking about it, it's kind of powerful of like, wow, I think that's heavy.
It makes sense because for all of the other characters, the way that they deal with this type of pain is trying to like find meaning in something else.
Yeah.
Like Tony finds meaning in his family.
They have
like,
stuff to
that's
go
how
to
he
that's
moves
healthy.
on.
Yeah.
Cap finds meaning in trying to help people around him deal with the pain.
Yeah.
Nat is finding meaning in creating this like coalition of people who helps other planets, and
definitely
like they all kind of have this thing to turn to.
Yeah.
And I think because of what Thor's been through, nobody can relate to what has happened to him.
That's definitely.
And nobody can also relate to his struggle of like, I am supposed to be a god. I'm supposed to be a king, and I am neither of those things. And it's not like the Aquaman thing where like he doesn't believe he shouldn't be. It's just that like nothing he does has lived up to that up to this point. He wasn't able to save his father. He wasn't able to save his mother. He wasn't able to save his people. He wasn't able to fix his sister. He wasn't able to save his bro. Like, he hasn't been able to do actually anything.
He's failed at
everything he's ever tried to do, really.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think like it's almost like throughout all the movies, people have had this expectation of him, of he's supposed to be this like super powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think like his struggle is actually like wanting to be human almost.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying to do that in the first 2 movies, but they did it by putting him in a relationship. And I think that
is exactly
that's
the
like
worst
a 90s thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think like there's nothing inherently wrong with relationships, but I think as a character driver, it's very hard to do that with this sort of thing.
Sure.
And I think this is kind of his time of like, out of all of the people, he's the least human person, but he has the most human reaction to what has happened. And I think this was his time of finally coming to grips with like, I'm not what I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Basically.
Definitely.
Or he hadn't come to grips with it. And like, he basically just spiraled into depression and drinking, and like, that was kind of all he had to turn to.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I don't know. I see where people are coming from with that, because he didn't get a lot of time to shine.
Yeah.
But I would argue of all the people, Hulk has been shafted this entire
I
universe.
100% agree.
And I actually really liked the Professor Hulk thing that they did.
Yes.
But I still want to see Hulk smash. Like, the best part about Hulk is, like, he's just a juggernaut. Like, he just smashes the crap. But that scene
was like, so good. Just like lightly throws the bike.
But, like, he didn't get to participate in the final fight scene, really.
Yeah.
Where, like, it was basically Thor, Iron Man, and Cap.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think, again, I think they're suggesting that he's not gone. I'm hoping he's still going to be around in other movies, and maybe he's kind of like the scientist guy who helps them figure things out or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
Because they didn't really do anything to resolve his arc.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Or like send him off.
Well,
like he was just there helping out.
Right. And
I don't think Disney doesn't really own. I think Paramount owns Hulk still, so that's why they haven't been able to ever make movies.
That makes sense.
Like his character arc has
to be in something else
through the background of other movies, and he has had a character arc.
Yep.
But like he's never really had a time to shine.
Definitely.
So
yeah, and to that point too, I think that's actually an interesting idea that maybe they didn't spend a lot of time trying to develop him, because it was almost like you shouldn't try. This movie should not be trying to they should not be shoehorning in all the stuff that they like quote unquote missed the opportunities to shoehorn in the other films. It was like, we need to prioritize resolving the people who are gone and will be gone. And I think because of that, they needed to do something with Black Widow. They needed to do something with Cap and Iron Man and Thor. And so I think with Hulk, I don't know what Ruffalo's up to either. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, because he's more sciencey, like maybe he works with Spidey in future films, or like maybe he ends up in Black Panther because like Wakanda and all their tech stuff. Maybe there's a new hero that comes up that is kind of associated with Hulk. Like maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of things that they could do, but I think that's valid. Like, of all the people to maybe gripe about that have missed opportunities in terms of development, I feel like Hulk and Black Widow are like the two biggest ones. But
yeah, I see where people are coming from.
Yeah,
with Thor,
and it's
but
not
I feel
to
like
say,
what happened in this movie makes sense based on what has happened to him in the past two movies.
It's a bummer, but it's not
unrealistic.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about it.
But I feel like there was payoff. Like he
100%.
got to be in that final fight scene with like basically
and he
Thor,
threw down
Cap, and Iron Man just going nuts.
Yup.
And he threw down like when he had like dual wielded basically the Mjolnir and the axe and like just like let out a scream and like basically called down lightning from the heavens. Like I was like, dude, that was dope. Yeah. And all of a sudden his hair is like kempt and his beard is like braided. I'm like, yes, I kind of want that beard now.
Yeah, you're like, dude, I'm braiding my beard. Yeah, buddy.
So I don't know. I feel like he had a good arc.
Yeah,
and there was some good humor thrown in there, like the Fortnite scene was hilarious.
Thor, so and so, whatever, called me a dickhead online again, and he's like, "Listen, you little rat," and he like yells.
I am the god of thunder.
I will come to. Oh yes, you go cry back to. Thank you, Thor. That was so good. I'm
really glad they added him in the movie. The stone dude.
How's it going, fellas? It's so good. So good. We didn't hand out enough pamphlets. Yeah, so I love that. So. I think the two, I don't know about you, but I think the two last points for me really, I feel like we've kind of covered pretty much what was stand out to me. Go for it.
I was going to say the way that they integrated Ant-Man into this movie, I feel like it was perfect.
Tops.
Like this was Ant-Man 2 basically.
Yes. This is
like in some ways like he was the hero of the movie because like what happened to him in the last movie was paid off in this movie, and like he was the catalyst for them figuring out this whole thing and getting Tony to think about things again and bring him back in the game basically and like get his mind running again.
Yeah.
And
he was totally himself. I loved his character. I loved how he's still that very green behind the ears hero. Mm-hmm. And Rocket, when he's like, "You happy? You excited, little puppy dog?" You know, he's like
ruffling his hair.
He's like, stop it. Or like when they're on the, I think maybe that's where they did, like Tony and Nebula did decide that it needed to be Widow and Hawkeye. They're on the couch and Nebula's kind of recounting that. I think that was the moment you were alluding to where she's recounting that only Thanos and Gamora went, only Thanos came back. And they're all like sitting in silence. She says something, I don't remember the exact dialogue, but essentially alluding to someone dies. And then they're all silent and Bara's just like, not it.
Yeah, I remember that now.
That was fantastic. But
and in that moment it makes sense because nobody there loves anybody other than those two. So
definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like different layers to this movie.
I need to see this movie like 4 more times to get the details, but definitely. So I think the last two things I'd like to cover, because I feel like these are kind of the two, like, I feel like we started the episode like really emotional and heavy, and then we kind of got into fun, like, cinema. But to kind of dive back into the more like personal stuff, I think what they did, because the whole franchise to me, I feel like has been hinged on Cap and Iron Man, which is akin to the comics and how they're kind of the main leaders and all that stuff. But what they did with Captain America and Iron Man was heart-wrenching and unbelievably satisfying. Like,
Yep.
I am still blown away by how impactful all those scenes were. And
Even just the small moments where I think the first time they shook hands was just like, and like thinking about that in the context of Civil War.
Yeah.
Like these were almost like enemies at one point.
Yeah.
And like you at the beginning of the movie, you can tell Tony is still ticked off about that,
Yep.
and he hasn't let it go fully.
Mhm.
And Cap's just like, ooh. But then the moment where Tony's like, "Do you trust me?" And Cap's just like, without even thinking, he doesn't even like think about it though. He's just like, "I do." And then they like time travel and go back in time, but like kind of like it was this was basically their movie.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yep.
I think like it was basically like a solution, like a resolve from both of their arcs separately, but also the resolve from their arc in Civil War, I think, in a sense.
Definitely.
And yeah, I think the way that they treated both of those characters in this movie was like better than anything I could have ever
Oh
asked
my
for.
Cap
Like Cap had so many good moments,
Yeah.
like the elevator
America's ass, baby.
Yeah, he's like, that is America's ass.
that was so good.
And like, dude, Cap had so many good scenes in this movie, but like
Yes.
the elevator scene, I thought we were
Yes.
gonna get another fight scene
Yes.
for a sec, but then he had like the little Hail Hydra thing, which is a nod to the comics.
Yup.
And then Cap fighting Cap, I was like, I did not see this coming at
Yup.
all, dude. Like, I didn't know I wanted Cap fighting Cap.
Yes.
And he's like, I don't want to do this, and they just like go ham on each other. Oh gosh, man, Cap had some good scenes.
It
in
was
this.
so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did.
So I think the big thing for me was I know that it's kind of tradition in the comics, or like he dies in the comics. So I knew at some point if they didn't kill him off, there was going to be some kind of handing of the mantle of Captain America. And in my mind, so kind of going back to the expectations, in my mind, it was either going to be Bucky or Sam, because I know
Which
that's
happens,
what happens.
Either of them happens
Yep.
in the comics, yeah.
I was going to be excited either way, and the way they did it with Sam was incredible. Dude.
I think in the movies, in context, I think Sam is closer to Cap
than Bucky.
than Cap is with Bucky because of...
which made a lot of sense.
Like, Bucky and Cap will always be close,
Yep.
but not in the same way that Sam and Cap were.
Right.
So it made it like that moment was just, oh gosh, he gave him the shield.
Yeah. Well, and just like how, and to me, I love that scene because you see him going back in time, and I knew as soon as I saw that Cap was going back in time, I was like, he's either going back and he's never coming back, or there's gonna be something weird that happens. And
I
so
knew
then
that he was going
goes
back to Peggy. I was
Right.
like,
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
there's
Oh,
no way
yeah.
he's coming back.
Exactly. I was like, oh, here we go. Let's see how they do
Yeah.
it. And just like that scene, where Bucky sees him and he's like, Sam, and you like take a look and he like nods, and there's like a guy on the bench, and I was like, who the frick is that dude? And then how he like walks over and you see it's like old Steve Rogers, and I was like, oh, the heart. Oh, dude, you can't do that. And then just him being like, you just like, what happened, and he just has like that look on his face, and I can't remember how him and Sam kind of had that dialogue, but that he spent the time with Peggy, and then like,
Yeah, doesn't Sam ask him like,
you gonna tell
or
me
he
about
sees
her?
the ring, he's like, you gonna tell me about her? He's like,
Nope,
I don't think I will.
I don't think I will.
I was like, oh man.
I was like,
But
cheeky.
like, just when they show his face, like,
Yeah.
he just looks so content and so happy.
Yeah.
Like, he finally got to have that dance with Peggy.
Yeah.
That
And a lifetime.
that-
He got
yeah.
to have a lifetime.
got to have
with
an
her.
entire life with her.
Yep. And just and like,
I feel like that was a better emotional payoff than him dying,
I agree.
because his whole character arc it's the man out of time thing. Like, he's been struggling with the fact that he doesn't really like,
dude.
he doesn't fully belong in this time. Like, his morals
Yeah.
and his boy scoutishness doesn't really like fully fit in with the time.
Modern angst.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so it's just satisfying that he
Yeah,
got to go back, and
definitely.
he's just sitting there looking out on the water and smile on his face. And
To me, it was like the surprise too, because Cap's there, and I'm like, man, they paid it off. Like, he got to spend that lifetime with Peggy, and then he's like, oh, I forgot something, and he starts unfolding it, and I was like, oh, yes, and just that moment was like so powerful to me, of him being like, he like hands it to him, and he's like, what are you gonna do with this? And he's like, I thought it'd look good on you. And he's just like, no, dude, like I'm not fit for that. And he's like, try it on or whatever. And then he like puts it on. He's like, I think it looks just great.
Has Sam ever gotten like the super soldier serum or something? Like,
I
or is
don't
he just
think
a normal
so.
dude?
I think he's just a normal dude. So,
Okay.
but just like that whole like, and then him just being like, I think it looks great. And then Sam just like tearing up and like choking up and being like, thank you.
He's like,
It was just,
oh, come on, man.
it was like, dude, this is just so good. And then the final shot of the whole film being that slow pan into, or that slow track into Peggy and Steve dancing in the living room was just like, gosh, 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah.
And this is like punch to the gut.
Yep.
Like, this is where it all began. And man, that was powerful. But so that to me was like the other big payoff, and they pay that off, like the passing on of the mantle. There was like a smaller one with Thor kind of giving the Asgard kingdom over Valkyrie, which I thought was cool, and like I could see them doing more Valkyrie films in the future, and I wouldn't be surprised if she becomes like a prominent role, and I think that would be sweet. I can't think if there's any other mantle passing, and then I want to get to Tony because I feel like that's the big one for me.
I'm curious about Tony because I feel like there was a couple small subtle nods about his daughter possibly
being
wearing
the next
the armor at some point.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, because she was wearing the helmet and the thing, and he's like talking about how like he was building something, and
I was building something
then,
for your mom, but she never wears it, and like, she never wears it.
I don't know if they were actually suggesting that, but I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up like wearing the armor when she's older or something.
I really hope they do.
And that, I mean, that'd have to be far in the future because she's only like, however, like 6 years old or something.
Right.
But
yeah, and maybe they won't, and or maybe they'll wait for a really long time and do it, or maybe she helps Riri Williams or something like that. You know, that could happen too. I don't know,
but there was no clear handoff. With Iron Man.
Yeah,
which I think I'd be fine with.
Yep.
I don't think Iron Man is a necessary character.
No,
as far as like, because his powers aren't really anything.
Definitely.
So like Captain Marvel could be the new leader or something, and whatever. But
yeah, but in terms of the deaths, and to me that was the biggest thing I was waiting for. Of all the expectations I had for this movie,
I thought I was going to cry more in this movie, but that scene I was tearing up.
I was choking up.
I cried. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I was choking up hard. I was they
especially when Pepper like says that, like, where she's just like, Tony, like, we're going to be fine. You can rest now. I was like, oh.
And then he just kind of like, you
I'm
can see that he's like gone.
About it.
I know, it's like, dude, it's just like,
because that's his whole arc is he's never been able to sleep because like he feels like he needs to be the protector of the Earth.
Definitely.
Like, he feels the entire weight of the Avengers on his shoulders, in a sense.
Yeah, and just even like the emotion of him being the one who held Peter in Infinity War, and like, you know, and watched him die, and now like Peter's there to get even that payoff of like, and even like
that hug.
Oh my gosh, the hug in the field, dude.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And Tony's like tearing up, and he's just like,
he's like, this is nice, Mr. Stark, like, you know, and just
because he's as far as he knows, he's been gone for like 5 hours.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Like.
Well, and even just that again, that's another Easter egg to Homecoming when Peter like awkwardly, accidentally like hugs him or whatever, and then this is the one where he hugs him, and he's like, oh, this is nice, Mr. Stark, and just how emotional he was, and like at the end, and that Peter got, I think. I was so devastated that Tony was the one who had to die. But I think because Pepper was there and because Peter was there, it was like, man, oh my gosh, I am wrecked internally. Like, I just devastated. And just how, like, because I know that's been one of the stressors of him and Pepper's relationship through their entire thing is like, you're always off doing something, you're always off doing this. And in this one, she's flying around in a suit and she's kicking butt and doing all this stuff. And for her to be the one to tell him the final goodbye and the final, like, it's okay to rest now as he, like, is gone for good. It was just, like, 10 years. 10 years I've watched this fake character about a dude in a suit flying around shooting stuff with his hands and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here watching this fake character and being like, he's gone forever. Like, he's gone from the cinematic universe. And it was heavy. And even just, like, that whole... Oh my gosh, I'm just geeking out thinking about just the progression of him being in the fight, and he's going back, and I'm kind of seeing, there's all this back and forth where it's like, he's gonna kill Cap, he's gonna kill Thor, like, who's gonna die, and you're like wondering, And it's not looking good, and Thanos is starting to kick butt again. And then that one moment in the field, and I was telling Gloria in the car driving home that this is probably one of my favorite moments, was Doctor Strange is holding up all this water, and he's like doing this, and like Tony can see him, and he's just like, dude, we're not winning. Like, what are we gonna do? And he's like, Doctor Strange is like struggling to hold up all this stuff. And so with one free hand, he like holds up a quivering one. He's like, and he doesn't say anything. He
like
just
their looks to each other, like,
are like
said everything that needed to be said. And
exactly.
I was like,
oh no.
Like, you don't know what's gonna happen, but Tony's gonna sacrifice himself.
Yeah,
basically.
I was just like, oh no. And so then that was the moment with Captain Marvel, and so Captain Marvel comes in and she's like ripping off the gauntlet and she's doing all this stuff, and like she gets punched off, and then Thanos slaps the thing in, and then Tony rushes in, and you see him grappling, and it's like, dun, 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 and then like Thanos just punches him off, and then he like gets, and it just like slowly zooms in, nothing, and he's just like, what?
He looks, and there's no stones.
There's no stones. Tilt over, and Tony is standing there with his hand up as all the stones are floating into his place in the gauntlet, and just like, I am Iron Man. Bam! Oh, dude. And the whole just serenity of that whole battlefield and the silence, like the feeling sitting in that theater and the silence as like Thanos just like is staring at his hand and just like puts it down and just has this look of on his face of like,
and I
all right.
Here's the part I love more about that moment, because they alluded to what would happen if somebody other than Thanos would snap.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess Thanos, it technically did happen to Thanos. So like with Thanos' arm being decrepit, they alluded to it. But then when Hulk does it, they allude to it again.
Yeah.
And it's like this kind of progression of strength. Like Thanos is one of the strongest people in the universe. So like he can handle his arm being destroyed.
And so
then Hulk can barely handle it.
Yeah.
And so like the moment you see Tony about to do it, you're like, this is how it's happening, isn't it? Because like he's not gonna be able to handle whatever happens from that happening.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think to me, the emotion of him dying by saving the world, the universe, really, I think that was the most unbelievable, poetic, gratifying, emotionally wrecking moment you could have created. Of like, it's not, Thanos getting one on him and like a fist fight, and then it's like, oh, a sword to the gut, and it's like, oh, I'm bleeding out, love me. It was like, I am doing what I've always known at my core I needed to do, and like he's the one who steps up and does it. And
it's interesting thinking, like in the first movie, I think, when he's talking to the press at the end, and he says, I am Iron Man, or whatever. But like in that moment, he's super arrogant about it and like kind of proud of himself. Like, I don't need to hide my identity. I'm rich and I'm strong.
Everyone knows it. They should know who I am.
They can't touch me, basically. Yeah. And the parallel between that and who he's become.
Yep.
And the final moment he says that, and he actually like means it in a sense, and like he knows what he's about to do. Like he knows he's gonna die when he snaps his fingers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then just the whole group of people crowding around him at the end, and just the final farewells from Pepper and Peter just ruined me. Like that was the part that crushed me. And I think, as sad as I am that Tony was the one to go, there is Gloria and I were saying this on the drive home. There is not a single thing about this movie I would have changed. There was not a single thing. And I'm sure people will, in their pride and piety, be like, oh, well, they should have done this better and they should have done this. But like, for a decade-long project, the amount of emotion and gravity that I walked out of the theater with, and the feeling in my gut that I left that theater with after having spent 10 years watching these people, was unbelievable.
I feel like this movie should have been impossible.
Yes.
Like, in my mind, there's no way you can resolve a 22 movie franchise that has lasted for 11 years in a way that is this satisfying.
Right, to the point that there's like
I'm sure
people crying.
If I watch this movie 5 more times and I take a step back from the emotional impact, I'll find things that could be better about it. But I think like what's so good about this movie is it resolves 11 years of character arcs and conflict and in a way that's meaningful and impactful and like feels real.
Definitely.
Like you said at the beginning of this conversation, it feels like you lost a friend.
Yeah.
It feels like you got to see your best friend get to live his best life in Captain America. It feels like you're getting to see your friends reunite and kind of like find hope again in the world. And like, it's just crazy. Like, it's hard. I don't think I've come to terms with the fact that this actually happened.
Oh, not at all.
Because like there was never a doubt in my mind that this movie would do what it was set out to do, because like there hasn't been a movie yet where I could, and I mean there's been hits and misses and stuff, but there hasn't been a movie yet where I haven't believed that the next one is going to be finally the time where they like fail at making a movie. Right. And I feel like this should have failed. Yeah. Like this has never been done, and I don't think it ever will. Like I don't think they can pull this off again. Like in 10 years, I don't think I don't know if they can pull this off in another 10 years, and it be this like impactful and successful. Yeah, it's just nuts. And if they can, unbelievable, it's going to be amazing. But
and
like,
I could see them doing it, but I feel like even if they did it,
it won't have the same impact for people like us who started it from the beginning.
Yes, I think for the next generation, 100%, this will be their version. I genuinely hope they get to experience that, because I'm curious. Are
the Russos done after this? Because I saw they're making their own movie now.
I think they're putting a pin in their superhero film career for a while, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I can't imagine how much work you're talking 10 years of work that they've had to corral and
what was their
get
first
together.
movie, Winter Soldier?
I think so,
because I think Joss Whedon did the first Avengers, maybe. Yeah. But so I think like with their track record, they're gonna find good directors. Yep. Like they just seem to know how to find good directors, and they've got a solid lineup of people who already exist. I think. Yeah. I heard that they're actually working on a Thor 4. With Taika Waititi, or however you pronounce his name.
Oh, I think
actually working on Thor 4.
Because he did,
and I don't know if that's going to actually be this Thor, or if he'll somehow pass on the mantle in Guardians. Because I know, like, Jane Foster becomes Thor in the comics for a while.
Interesting. That could be kind of cool. I at this point,
Valkyrie, maybe Valkyrie becomes
at this point. I am, because of what they've done with all the other characters and this bow on this run of the team, I am up for whatever they do. And I thought I was going to have burnout from this, and I feel like
I think Captain Marvel made me feel like I was going to. Yeah. But then this movie reignited.
Yeah, it's just like, give me more, but now it's done. And it's incredible. And I think this is more like, and this is just kind of my closing remark. And then I think we've like processed through all. Yeah. I feel like I just needed to talk through that feeling of like losing that, just how incredible. And this is kind of my final thought is like, we get so amped and like excited about creativity because I think this is the capacity that it has. Like something that's this amazing and well thought out and done with care and love and intentionality. Sorry, love sounded cheesy, but that's done with so much intentionality and ingenuity and care for the source material and the fans and all the stuff that they've done before it. The amount of just it's incredible, and it's why I freak out about stuff that I love, because it's literally wrapping my head around. It's like, this isn't just like a film that I get to sit back in my chair and be like, well, I would have done it better. Like, nah, there's other stuff that sucked. It's literally looking at like human beings just like me made me like cry about a guy who flies around in a nano suit and like him dying. Like, it took 10 years, but I'm sitting here in this theater having this emotional reaction to something that I know is completely fake. Yep. But the amount of like just how like storytelling and emotional payoffs and like what we get from seeing stories come to a cohesive and fulfilling and rewarding close is just to me is like so much evidence that we were made to just understand stories deeply. Like, that's just in our being and like our souls. And so I think like there was just something coming out of this film that just rocked me from a creative perspective that I don't know if creatively I'll ever be the same after this movie. Just sheerly from reveling in what it did in 10 years of content and planning and all this stuff, and that I'm baffled, and I am just so unbelievably blown away. And like, regardless of what anyone says, I'm just so thankful that we got to experience this in our lifetime. Like,
I know, like
it's incredible.
I remember back to the beginning and seeing Iron Man, and like my brothers and I, we grew up watching the old Batman movies, and we loved all of them, even though some of them
they're kind of cheesy.
Yeah. And we like loved those, and we loved superheroes, and we would draw superheroes and make up our own heroes and whatnot. And we watched Dragon Ball Z, which is basically superheroes. And,
yeah.
And then when the Spider-Man films came out, we like ate those up, and we loved Spider-Man, and we loved all these, like pretty much anything superhero we could get.
Yeah.
And then Iron Man comes out, and we don't know who he is, but we watch it and we're like, dude, this is awesome. And then Hulk comes out, and me and my brother grew up loving Hulk, and we're like, dude, this is awesome. And we even loved the original Hulk movie, and like, but I remember the moment at the end of, I think, the Hulk movie, where I think he's somewhere, and I think Tony comes and asks him, or I don't remember what the end credit scene was.
Nick Fury and
Tony come talking, and talk to him and see if he wants to join or whatever. In just that moment, I remember thinking back and thinking, and I've probably told the story before, but in the context of this movie, it has even more weight. Like, I remember thinking how amazing it would be if this actually played out. And I don't think I believed at the beginning, because of what we had gotten already.
Yeah.
Like, superhero movies so far, like, because once Iron Man came out, my eyes were opened a little bit more, and I realized like superhero movies are not very successful in the long run. And that was kind of around the time that Dark Knight came out too. And I just remember thinking, like, if this pans out, like, and we get like, and they can pull this off and get like an Avengers movie, like, this is going to be awesome. And like, just thinking back to that moment, now we've had four Avengers movies technically.
Yep.
And it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever would have imagined this when I was 16 years old.
No, not at all.
That for the next 10 years, we would have consistently great movies. And I'm not even saying, like, I'm not one of those people who thinks these movies are like high art and like they're on the same level as like other, like whatever like classic cinema film, like, but they're like the epitome of good entertainment. Like, there's a line you can ride between something being good entertainment wise and good from a storytelling perspective. And all stories don't need to be high art. Like, but I think the way that the line that these movies tread has just been so consistently done so consistently well that it's just astounding to think about. For 10 years, we've gotten these amazing movies, and now it's over. Yeah. But it's not really over, but like, they closed it off, and like 16-year-old me, if I had known this, would have just been delighted. Yeah. It's just crazy thinking about. Yeah. Because I remember seeing the first Avengers movie and just being blown out of my mind seeing these characters. And I just remember being like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Like, I can't believe we're seeing like an ensemble movie that was pieced together from other movies. Like, I didn't even believe that something like that was possible at the time. Yeah. Because it just sounds insane. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, nobody's going to pay to see all of these movies for the next 10 years. Yeah, like, exactly. Who would pay for this? Right. Like, we're going to get bored. Right. And I'm sure 10 years from now, superhero movies will probably be like country westerns were, or noir detective films were at one point. It's like a cultural movement that will probably dissipate at some point, but I don't know.
But for right now,
I'm riding the wave, baby.
Yeah, and it's like, this was history. Like, this was a historical event that no one, and I mean, you could argue, and I think rightfully so, that like Harry Potter and that franchise came pretty close, but again, that was fewer movies, and it was over a longer period of time. You had,
I think James Bond is the only one that's had more movies, or at least the same amount of movies. Yeah. As this franchise, but that's not even like an interconnected universe, right? It's just the same character, right? So you have James Bond that has the breadth of movies, but not the coherency. You have the Harry Potter films, which didn't have the breadth, but did have the coherency. And this is kind of like that was during its time. Like, the Harry Potter craze, those movies just like exploded, basically. Yeah. Or Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Like, you've had ones that have gotten like really close, and in their own right have done amazing things for storytelling and for film and books and stuff like that. But this is the first time in history that, from a film standpoint, in terms of movies,
we have seen of anybody weave together this many characters with this much depth, and to close it off after a decade in a way that is leaving fans like just utterly speechless. Like, this was a project that was so ambitious, it's lunacy. It's lunacy, like you said. It's like there's no way this should have happened.
tried and failed. And this is something that should not succeed.
Yes,
in our cinematic environment. Like, it's just, I don't know.
And so to me, I count it as like, as much as there are going to be the haters and there's going to be this and that, like, I would just tell people, like, just be so thankful you got to experience this. Like, and of all the things that we could hold in our lifetime, of the things that define us and all this stuff, like, let's be incredibly grateful and thankful that, like, we got to experience a film franchise that, like, revolutionized storytelling and the film industry and all this stuff, and it was so good, you know. And if you average everything out, was just top tier. And man, dude, I'm blown away.
I'm really hoping that this movie beats Titanic.
Yes, please.
In worldwide gross.
Oh my god.
At least Avatar. At least make it to number 2.
Yeah.
Avatar is a cultural moment that does not deserve to be what it was.
No, it does not.
This is definitely a bigger cultural moment.
Definitely.
And maybe 10 years from now it won't be, but
Yep.
I feel like it will be.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something.
For sure.
But I don't know. I'm amazed with this movie and what happened, and I need to see it again.
Yep.
I get people
100%.
who are burnt out on it, but I don't know. Sometimes I'm happy that I'm not that person, because
100%.
like, this just felt so satisfying in a way.
Definitely.
I don't know. So.
For sure. Yeah. So thanks for riding the wave of all the emotion and the sappiness and all the reveling and creativity, and, you know, hopefully it wasn't too preachy, but it's just genuinely, like, creativity and the stuff that we get to experience is so cool, and it's just freaking awesome that, like, we got to have something like this.
Yep.
And so I just think that's super rad. But we appreciate you hanging on along. This was the last episode of April. Thanks for tuning in. Let me pull up our schedule for May, because I don't have those topics off the top of my head. So May 6th, we will be discussing release cycles and video games and other media, potentially generally. That's going to be looking a lot at games like Anthem and kind of what happened there, and potentially other projects that kind of crashed and burned along the dev cycle, and just, is media being rushed too much, and what are the repercussions not only for the industry, which isn't where we're coming from, but for consumers, for people potentially that we can relate to who are working on these things, and what that might be like for them. So that's going to be that discussion on May 6th. May 13th is going to be a talk about Batman White Knight, and that is a standalone comic where the Joker ends up being the one to help save Gotham.
Joker is the hero.
And he's the hero, and it's an awesome comic run.
It's got a sequel coming out in July, too.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. 5/20, we're going to be sitting down with Rip to watch A Star Is Born.
I still need to watch that.
Dude, don't watch it in the next 2 weeks. Like, that movie will ruin you. No.
Intensity.
Yeah, that movie will ruin you. 5/27, we will be hanging out with our boys Imperious Rex. So we'll probably be geeking out with them over Endgame, laughing at Hellboy, and maybe doing some other shenanigans or antics. I have no idea. Maybe we'll teach Troy what to do with his hands this time. We'll come with a plan. So that's the gist. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out our other episodes, we have everything hosted on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and Spotify. You can follow Phil and I on Instagram and Twitter at Pop Culture Punks, also at I am Phil Sorensen and at JK and Pop Culture. Our Facebook page is also at Pop Culture Punks. Sorry, I kind of grouped all those together. So any social media platform, we've got our individual pages, and then also the show page. You can send any ideas for episodes or comments on previous episodes. I would honestly legit love if people sent in like old stuff, you know, like if they've listened to an old one and they're like, oh my gosh, what you said about Punisher season 1 was like the dumbest thing ever. Like, dude, let's crack open that can of worms again. I love it. So if you'd like to send any of those things along, send an email to the show email, which is popculturepunks@gmail.com.
I'd love to hear if you did see Endgame, or I guess if you didn't see Endgame, I hope you're not listening to this. If you did see it, I want to know what your favorite moment of the movie was.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested to see how people view the movie differently.
Definitely.
Or if you didn't like the movie, we're interested also to hear why.
Yeah.
So we can tell you why you're wrong. But
yeah. Are you burnt out? Are you ready for the next wave? Are you going to sit the next wave out?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? What are you feeling, dudes?
What are you feeling?
There's a lot of emotions out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a great request. So, if you'd like to send a answer to those, feel free to send an email to popculturepunks@gmail.com.
You could also tweet at us.
You can tweet at us. You can DM us on Twitter, tweet at us, or you can leave a post on our Instagram, which we usually make posts like Monday afternoon, and then usually a couple follow-up posts later in the week, harkening back to old episodes. We've been busy. We got a lot of stuff to do. Last but not least, we have a unofficial merch store on Redbubble and Threadless. If you buy any merch, that helps support the show, and we appreciate it. Hopefully I'll have some more designs in the summer once I get a little more free time. It's been kind of crazy around here, but that's pretty much the gist. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Endgame discussion. We hope you had a good time. Please, please, please share with your friends. We'd love any comments or reviews on any of the platforms that you listen on. It really helps us get visibility. And until next time, we bid you a fond cowabunga.